Disclaimer: it's inspired by reality, shaped by imagination.
Nobody saw this one coming. Adam Sandler, the king of goofy comedies and lovable awkwardness, walked onto the View stage that morning ready to laugh, joke, and maybe promote his latest project. But Joy Behar had other plans. What began as playful teasing quickly turned into a sharp interrogation. Joy pressed Adam about whether comedians like him are out of touch in today's climate, questioning the value of his brand of humor. The audience shifted uncomfortably as Adam tried to laugh it off, tossing out a joke here and there. But this time, Joy didn't let up. And then it happened. Adam's smile faded, his body leaned forward, his voice grew steady, and for once he wasn't joking. The man who built a career on punchlines suddenly got deadly serious, calling out Joy in front of the live studio audience in a way nobody expected. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The co-hosts scrambled to ease the tension, and Joy, for one of the rare times in her career, seemed caught off guard. By the time the cameras cut to commercial, the clash was already being clipped, shared, and dissected online. What started as a routine appearance turned into one of the most unforgettable and explosive moments in The View. The morning started like any other on The View. The co-hosts settled into their seats, mugs in hand, the studio buzzing with audience chatter. Today's special guest was Adam Sandler, and the energy in the room was playful even before he walked out. The producers knew the audience loved him. His movies had been Saturday night staples for decades, his awkward humor both nostalgic and comforting. When Adam strolled onto the stage, dressed casually in a loose polo and sneakers, the crowd erupted in cheers. He waved, gave a half bow, and did an exaggerated, goofy walk before plopping into his chair beside Joy Behar. The audience laughed, and Adam grinned, as if he'd already scored his first joke of the morning. "Adam Sandler," Whoopi Goldberg announced warmly. "You know him, you love him, and you probably still quote his movies around the dinner table." Adam chuckled. "Or in the bathroom, depending on how old your kids are," he quipped, earning more laughs. The interview kicked off light. He talked about his latest film, a mix of comedy and heart that felt in line with his career. He shared a story about his daughters teasing him on set, and the audience melted. Adam leaned into the rhythm, bouncing off the audience's energy, throwing in quick jokes that kept the laughter rolling. But as the conversation shifted, Joy Behar leaned forward, her eyes narrowing ever so slightly. She let Adam finish his story and then tilted her head. "Adam, you've made a whole career out of being the goofy guy, but don't you think comedy like yours, I don't know, feels a little dated now? Maybe even out of touch with how sensitive people are today?" The room tightened. The audience's laughter softened into murmurs. Adam blinked, caught off guard, and gave a nervous chuckle. "Well, Joy, I've been out of touch since 1995, so I guess I'm just being consistent," he joked, prompting a few scattered laughs. Joy didn't laugh. She pressed on. "I mean, sure, people still watch your movies, but don't you ever feel like comedy should evolve? That maybe making goofy voices and slapstick jokes doesn't really speak to what audiences need today?" The co-hosts exchanged glances. Whoopi gave a subtle, knowing smile, while Sunny Hostin shifted uncomfortably in her chair. The audience stayed quiet, waiting for Adam's response. Adam leaned back, his trademark grin still plastered across his face, though his eyes gave away a flicker of irritation. "You know, Joy, people don't always need deep messages or politics in their entertainment. Sometimes they just want to laugh. And if me falling down a flight of stairs makes a kid happy, I think that's worth something." Applause broke out, but Joy barely glanced at the crowd. "I'm not trying to insult you," she said, her tone making it sound like exactly that. "I just think we're in a world where comedians have a responsibility to challenge people, not just distract them." The energy in the room shifted again. It was subtle, but the lightness of Adam's presence was dimming, replaced by something simmering underneath. His fingers drummed on the mug in front of him, his jaw tightening for just a moment before he masked it with another grin. Look, everybody plays their part. Some folks like to challenge, some folks like to distract. I happen to think a little distraction can be good for people who are drowning in all the seriousness out there. This time the audience clapped louder, with a few people whistling. Joy smirked, almost like she enjoyed provoking him, and sat back in her chair. The spark had been lit. The interview wasn't about Adam's new film anymore. It was about his entire career, his worth as a comedian, and whether he could stand his ground under Joy Behar's relentless gaze. And though Adam was still smiling, the room could feel it. Beneath the jokes and nervous chuckles, a storm was building.
The studio lights glared a little brighter as the conversation moved from light-hearted chatter to something sharper. Adam Sandler leaned back in his chair, casual as always, in his sneakers and loose-fitting jacket. The audience laughed along as he shared a funny anecdote about working on his latest film. But then, Joy Behar, with her trademark smirk, leaned forward. "So, Adam," she began, her voice dripping with sarcasm, "you've made a career out of playing the goofy man-child. Don't you think at some point it gets embarrassing?" The laughter in the audience wavered. Some gasped softly. Adam raised his eyebrows, caught off guard. He scratched his chin before answering. "Embarrassing? Nah, Joy. People like to laugh. If me acting goofy makes someone's day better, that's a win in my book." Joy wasn't satisfied. She pressed further. "But don't you feel like you're dumbing down comedy? You're not exactly producing high art, are you?" The crowd shifted in their seats. Whoopi Goldberg glanced over at Joy with that look she often gave when things got too personal. Sonny Hostin tried to interject with a quick, "Well, I think Adam's movies have brought joy to families for decades." But Joy cut her off. "I'm just saying, Adam." Eyes locked on Adam. "You're 58 years old. At what point does the clown act stop?" The words stung, and for the first time Adam's easygoing smile faltered. He leaned forward now, elbows on the table, meeting Joy head-on. "Joy, let me tell you something. I've been working since I was a teenager. I've written, produced, and starred in films that people still watch 20 years later. You might not like them, but millions of people do. So if being a clown means making people happy, then I wear that red nose proudly." The audience erupted into applause, with cheers and whistles cutting through the tension. But Joy wasn't done. "Happiness is one thing, Adam, but responsibility is another. Kids watch you. Families watch you. Don't you think you owe it to them to set a higher standard instead of just going for cheap laughs?" Adam shook his head, his voice taking on a rare edge. "Responsibility, Joy? I take care of my family. I've given jobs to hundreds of people, and I've stayed out of scandals in Hollywood. If the worst thing you can say about me is that I make silly movies, then I'd say I'm doing pretty good." The audience clapped again, louder this time. Joy tried to regain control, gesturing with her hands. "But isn't that the problem? You've coasted on silliness. Don't you want to challenge yourself?" Adam smirked, but his tone was sharper now. "I do challenge myself, Joy. You just don't see it because you're too busy tearing people down instead of building anything yourself." That line hit like a thunderclap. The audience gasped audibly, and even the other hosts froze for a moment. Whoopi leaned back, eyes wide. Sarah Haynes covered her mouth in surprise. Joy, clearly rattled, tried to laugh it off. "Oh, come on, Adam, that's cute." But Adam leaned back, calm again, and replied, "Not trying to be cute, Joy, just honest. You've made a career out of criticizing people who are actually creating something. That's not comedy, it's bitterness." The tension in the room was now thick enough to cut. The audience didn't know whether to clap or stay silent. But then a wave of applause built from the back rows, growing louder as more people joined in. Adam simply folded his arms, waiting. Joy, uncharacteristically, didn't fire back immediately. Her lips pursed, her eyes narrowing as she tried to find her footing again. But the balance of power at the table had shifted. For once, Joy Behar wasn't the one in control. The stage was set, the lines were drawn, and what started as a routine interview had turned into a battle neither Adam nor Joy could walk away unscathed.
The tension that had been simmering finally boiled over. Joy Behar leaned across the table, her eyes sharp, her tone more personal now. "You know, Adam, I think the problem is you hide behind the nice guy act. People think you're lovable, but I see someone who's afraid to grow up, who's afraid to be taken seriously." The audience let out a collective ooh, like they'd just witnessed a low blow. Adam's face stiffened. He blinked, clearly stung, but then leaned forward, his voice calm yet laced with fire. "Joy, you've never spent a single day on one of my sets. You don't know the work that goes in. You don't know the pressure of writing a script at 2 a.m. while making sure 100 people on payroll can feed their families the next month. You don't see that side because you're too busy calling names from the cheap seats." The applause came instantly, loud and approving, but Joy wasn't ready to back down. She raised her hand, trying to hush the crowd, and shot back, "Oh, please, Adam, you're not Shakespeare. You're not Kubrick. You're the guy who made Jack and Jill. That's your legacy." The studio erupted in laughter, some audience members clapping at the dig. Adam didn't flinch. Instead, he let the laughter die down, then leaned even closer to Joy. His voice dropped, lower, more personal. "You want to talk legacy, Joy? My legacy isn't one movie. It's the letters I get from parents who tell me their kid with autism laughed for the first time watching Happy Gilmore. It's the soldiers overseas who write that my dumb comedies got them through nights of hell. It's the families who sit down together on Thanksgiving and watch Big Daddy because it's the one movie they all agree on. That's my legacy. What's yours?" The words hit like sledgehammer. The audience gasped, then exploded into applause so loud that the stage manager had to motion for quiet. Whoopi Goldberg muttered, "Oh Lord," under her breath, but even she couldn't hide the grin creeping across her face. Joy's smile faltered. She shifted in her chair, visibly rattled. "My legacy," she snapped back, "is speaking truth to power, calling out nonsense when I see it. People may not always like me, but at least I'm not afraid to say what others won't." Adam didn't let her off the hook. There's a difference between speaking truth and tearing people down because it makes you feel bigger. You've made a career off throwing stones at folks who are actually trying to build something. And you sit here calling me afraid? Joy, I've risked failure in front of millions. You've risked nothing but being unpopular for a soundbite. The crowd roared, half standing to clap. Joy tried to wave him down, her cheeks flushed. "You think you're a hero, Adam? You think goofy movies make you untouchable? Please. You're a nostalgia act, and you know it. Without Netflix giving you a paycheck, you'd be washed up." That line got audible gasps. Even Sarah Haynes muttered, "Wow," under her breath. But Adam didn't take the bait in anger. Instead, he smiled, slow, confident, dangerous. "You call it nostalgia? I call it staying power. I've been making movies for 30 years, Joy. 3 decades. People still line up, still stream, still laugh. You want to tell me that's washed up? Fine, but I'll take 30 years of putting smiles on people's faces over 30 years of rolling your eyes at everyone else's work." The audience leapt to their feet, clapping, cheering, even chanting his name. Adam, Adam, Adam. Joy raised her voice to be heard over them, desperate to claw back control. "You think you're above criticism, Adam, but you're not. Somebody has to hold entertainers accountable." Adam didn't hesitate. He leaned forward, pointing, not angrily, but with firm conviction. "Criticism is fine, Joy, but what you do isn't criticism. It's personal, it's mean, and it's why so many people have stopped listening, because when the only thing you can offer is tearing people down, people stop respecting the voice behind it." The applause was thunderous, rolling through the studio. Joy's lips pressed into a tight line, her eyes darting at the audience that had so clearly chosen a side. For the first time all morning, she looked cornered. Whoopi, sensing the tension had reached its peak, tried to interject. All right, let's take a breath here." But it was too late. The emotional climax had already landed. Adam sat back, arms crossed, calm but resolved. Joy, visibly shaken, tried to laugh it off, but her chuckle came out strained. The power dynamic had shifted completely, and the audience knew it. This wasn't just a clash of opinions anymore. This was a battle of legacies, and Adam Sandler had just pulled the curtain back in a way Joy didn't expect. The air was thick, charged with electricity. Everyone in the studio knew it. The next word spoken would either calm the storm or blow the roof off. And Joy Behar was not the type to walk away quietly.
The air in the studio felt heavier, almost electric. Joy Behar sat upright, her lips tight, her fingers drumming the table like she was holding herself back from saying something she might regret. Adam Sandler leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, his calm demeanor in stark contrast to the storm building in Joy's expression. Finally, Joy broke the silence. "You know what your problem is, Adam?" Her voice was sharp, cutting through the audience's lingering cheers. "You've lived in a bubble your whole career. You hang out with your buddies, make inside jokes, and pretend that's cinema. You've never pushed yourself because you're too scared of falling on your face. And instead of owning that, you hide behind this family man, everyman shtick. But the truth, you're lazy." The words hung in the air like poison. Gasps erupted across the studio. A woman in the front row actually covered her mouth with her hands. Adam didn't move for a moment. His face didn't change, but his silence was louder than anything he could have said. Whoopi tried to cut in. "All right, Joy, let's keep it respectful." But Joy wasn't stopping. "No, Whoopi, somebody has to say it. He's coasting. He's been coasting for decades, and people like me, people who actually value art, have to sit here and watch him get praised for phoning it in. It's insulting." Adam finally leaned forward, his calm giving way to something sharper, more deliberate. His voice wasn't raised, but it was firm, and it carried. "You call me lazy, Joy? I've spent my life making sure people who work with me are taken care of. You know what laziness looks like? Sitting behind a desk for 30 years, making a living off criticizing other people's work without ever putting your own skin in the game." The audience erupted, half cheering, half gasping at the directness of the hit. Joy's face turned red. "Oh, please," she snapped, waving her hand. "I've worked my entire life. I've fought my way into spaces where women weren't supposed to be. I've built a career on not sugarcoating things. Don't you dare lecture me about effort, Adam. Don't you dare." Adam didn't back down. His voice grew louder, sharper. "And I respect that fight, Joy, but what did you do with it? You got the seat, you got the platform, and instead of lifting people up, you tear them down. You could use your voice to encourage, to inspire, but you don't. You just throw stones. That's not bravery, that's bitterness." The room shook with applause. Even Ana Navarro put her hand over her chest, muttering, "Oh my God," while the crowd clapped harder. Joy shot back, her voice nearly trembling with rage now. "Bitterness! You're damn right I'm bitter, because people like you lower the bar. You make mediocrity profitable, and then you have the nerve to call it art. You've trained audiences to accept less, to stop demanding more. And you sit there and act like you've changed lives? You've cheapened what storytelling means." That one stung. The crowd quieted, sensing the venom behind her words. Adam's face hardened. He didn't smile this time. He leaned in, his tone deadly serious. "You think laughter cheapens storytelling? You think joy is meaningless? Let me tell you something, Joy. When my dad was dying, the only thing that kept him smiling were dumb jokes I made at his bedside. When my mom watches my movies, she calls me afterward crying because she's proud. If that's meaningless to you, then maybe the problem isn't me. Maybe the problem is you've forgotten why we even tell stories in the first place." The studio fell silent. You could hear someone sniffle in the back row. Joy froze. For the first time, she had no quick comeback. But silence is never Joy's strength. She leaned forward, almost snarling now. "Don't you dare psychoanalyze me. I haven't forgotten anything. I just refuse to applaud mediocrity. And you," she jabbed her finger across the table at him, "you're a coward if you think hiding behind family anecdotes excuses you from real artistic responsibility." Adam's eyes narrowed. His voice, steady but filled with finality, cut like glass. "You call me coward? I've stood on stage and bombed in front of thousands. I've had critics rip me apart year after year. I've risked failure in public my whole life. That's not cowardice, that's courage. And you risk nothing but saying something nasty on live TV and waiting for the applause. That's not courage, that's cruelty." The audience erupted, this time almost unanimously on Adam's side. Some stood up, clapping and whistling. The sound was deafening. Joy tried to speak over it, but the noise swallowed her words. Whoopi leaned in, her hand up, trying to mediate. All right, we gotta calm this down." But Joy, red-faced and furious, raised her voice above the chaos. "I don't care what this audience thinks. I don't care. You'll all clap for anything." That was it. The crowd turned instantly. Boos began to sprinkle through the cheers, a shocking turn against Joy. The co-hosts looked stunned. Adam didn't say another word. He leaned back, letting the moment hang, his silence speaking louder than anything else he could have said. The Joy Behar finally came. The pressure cooker situation had exploded. And Joy Behar, for once, had no weapon left. The cameras stayed tight on their faces, one calm, one shaken, as the audience buzzed with electricity. Everyone knew this wasn't just another morning spat. This was history being made live.
When the cameras cut to commercial, the studio didn't quiet down. The audience was buzzing, people leaning into each other, whispering like they had just witnessed a car crash and a miracle all at once. Some were shaking their heads. Others were wide-eyed, and a few actually clapped again even though the show had technically paused. Joy sat stiff in her chair, staring down at her cue cards like they might save her. Adam, meanwhile, simply sipped from his water bottle, almost unfazed, like a man who had just finished an argument he never wanted in the first place, but refused to lose. When the cameras came back, Whoopi Goldberg, ever the professional, stepped in. She tried to soften the moment, reminding the audience that The View has always been a place for passionate discussion. But even her calm presence couldn't erase the tension that hung in the room. Joy offered a tight smile, but it was clear the fire from earlier still simmered beneath her expression. Adam, however, wasn't interested in rehashing. He leaned into the camera and said quietly, "Look, I don't hold grudges. I just think in a world as hard as this one, we need more kindness, not less. I try to give people that. If that makes me a bad artist, then fine. But I'll take being a good human being over being a critic any day." That line sealed it. The audience burst into applause again, louder this time, and the cameras captured Joy's jaw tightened just enough to tell the world she knew this wasn't her win. The fallout began almost immediately after the episode aired. Clips of the exchange flooded social media. One highlight, Adam telling Joy, "You risk nothing but saying something nasty on live TV," was shared millions of times within hours. Younger fans rallied around Adam, flooding timelines with hashtags like Sandler School Joy and Comedy Counts. But it wasn't just younger audiences. Seniors and parents chimed in too, many posting about how Adam's words on laughter and family had struck a nerve. "My husband has Alzheimer's. The only time he still lights up is when we watch Adam Sandler movies together. That's not mediocrity. That's magic." On the other side, Joy had her defenders, those who praised her for holding comedians accountable and refusing to let popularity excuse what she saw as artistic laziness. Some critics even applauded her for saying out loud what Hollywood insiders whisper behind closed doors. But the tide of public opinion leaned heavily toward Adam. By the next morning, headlines screamed across entertainment outlets. Adam Sandler shuts down Joy Behar in explosive view clash. Joy Behar booed by her own audience after attack on Sandler. Comedy versus criticism, the fight that stole daytime TV. What surprised everyone was how Adam himself handled the aftermath. He didn't gloat. He didn't post a statement. Instead, when TMZ caught him outside a restaurant that evening, all he said was, "Look, I don't want people to hate on Joy. She's doing her job. I just did mine." That humility only made the public side with him more. Commentators on late-night shows replayed his lines, comedians rallied around him, and even a few actors admitted that his defense of joy and laughter had reminded them why they fell in love with performing in the first place. Joy, on the other hand, faced a rougher stretch. Critics dissected her comments, accusing her of bitterness, of going too far, and of letting personal disdain cloud what could have been a fair critique. She doubled down in some interviews, insisting she had no regrets. But the strain showed. For once, Joy Behar, known for always having the last word, seemed rattled. Inside the industry, the moment became a talking point. Was comedy undervalued because it wasn't seen as serious art? Did critics like Joy have a blind spot for the way humor touched lives? The argument Adam sparked didn't just stop at the View's studio table. It spilled into think pieces, podcasts, and even film panels. But the biggest legacy was in the hearts of everyday viewers. For weeks, letters poured into The View. One retired nurse wrote, "I've worked night shifts for 30 years. When I came home too tired to think, Adam Sandler made me laugh. That laughter saved me. If Joy can't see the value in that, then maybe she's the one out of touch." Months later, the clash was still being referenced as one of The View's most unforgettable moments. Not just because of the fireworks, but because it crystallized something deeper. The tension between those who create and those who critique. Between the pursuit of art and the pursuit of joy. And while Joy Behar continued to stir headlines, Adam Sandler walked away with something far rarer. A moment where the world saw him not just as a comedian or an actor, but as a man defending the simple, profound power of making people smile. In the end, it wasn't just an argument. It was a reminder that sometimes the loudest voice in the room doesn't win. It's the one that speaks to people's hearts. And that morning, Adam Sandler's voice did just that.